The sun was setting over the dense forest, casting long, eerie shadows as Sarah and Alex trudged through the thick undergrowth. They had been hiking for hours, hoping to find a shortcut back to their campsite after an unplanned detour. "I swear the map said there was a trail here," Alex muttered, frustration evident in his voice. Sarah shook her head, her blonde hair matted with sweat. "We should have stuck to the main path. This was a bad idea." As the light began to fade, they stumbled upon a clearing. There, nestled amidst the towering trees, was a small, seemingly abandoned village. The dilapidated houses, with their cracked walls and broken windows, stood in eerie silence. "Whoa, check this out," Alex said, his annoyance replaced by curiosity. "An old village? This isn't on any map." Sarah frowned, looking around. "It's creepy. Let's just keep moving." But Alex was already heading towards the nearest house. "Come on, Sarah. We need to rest, and this is as good a place as any." Reluctantly, Sarah followed. They entered the house, its wooden floorboards creaking under their weight. Dust motes danced in the last rays of sunlight streaming through the broken windows. It was clear no one had lived here for decades. "This place gives me the creeps," Sarah said, hugging herself. "Let's just stay the night and leave at first light." Alex nodded. "Agreed. I'll get a fire going. It'll be dark soon." As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. They sat by the fire, its flickering light casting unsettling shadows on the walls. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide. Alex stopped poking the fire and listened. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Then faintly they heard it, a low guttural sound like a distant growl. "It's probably just an animal," Alex said, though he didn't sound convinced. The night wore on, the forest around them growing ever darker. The growls grew louder, closer, until they seemed to be right outside the house. Sarah clutched Alex's arm, her heart pounding. "We need to leave," she urged. Alex shook his head. "It's too dark. We'll get lost. Let's just stay inside. We'll be safe here." But deep down, neither of them believed that. The growling continued, now accompanied by strange, shuffling noises and the occasional thud, as if something heavy was moving outside. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the back of the house. Sarah screamed, and Alex jumped to his feet, grabbing a broken chair leg as a makeshift weapon. "We need to hide," he said urgently. They ran upstairs, barricading themselves in a small bedroom. The growls were louder now, interspersed with what sounded like wet, slithering noises. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Alex shook his head, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but we're not alone." The hours dragged on, the noises outside growing more frenzied. Something scraped against the door, followed by a guttural hiss. Sarah stifled a sob, clinging to Alex. As dawn approached, the noises finally began to subside. Exhausted and terrified, they ventured downstairs, hoping whatever had been stalking them was gone. But the house was not empty. The creature, tall and emaciated with elongated limbs and dark, leathery skin, stood in the doorway, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light fixed on them. Alex swung the chair leg, but the creature moved with inhuman speed, knocking him aside. It lunged at Sarah, its jagged teeth bared. "No!" Alex shouted, throwing himself at the creature. They tumbled to the ground and he screamed as its claws raked his back. "Run, Sarah! Run!" Sarah bolted from the house, her legs pumping furiously as she sprinted toward the forest. Behind her, she heard Alex's screams cut off abruptly, replaced by the creature's low growls. She didn't stop running until she was deep in the woods, her chest heaving and her vision blurry with tears. The sun was rising, casting a pale light through the trees. For hours she wandered, lost and disoriented, until she finally stumbled upon a road. A passing car screeched to a halt, and the driver, a middle-aged woman, rushed out. "Are you okay? What happened?" she asked, her face a mask of concern. Sarah collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Help me, please help me." The hospital room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of the machines. Sarah lay in the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The doctors had treated her cuts and bruises, but the trauma ran much deeper. The police had questioned her, but her story sounded too fantastical, too unbelievable. An abandoned village? A creature that hunted them? They chalked it up to shock and stress, a hallucination brought on by fear. To shock and stress, a hallucination brought on by fear. But Sarah knew the truth. She had seen the creature, felt its cold, clammy skin, heard its bone-chilling growls, and she had lost Alex to it. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Detective Harris, a grizzled man in his 50s, entered the room. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice gentle, "I just wanted to see how you're doing." Sarah nodded, her eyes dull. "I'm alive." Harris pulled up a chair and sat down. "Can you tell me again what happened? Anything you remember might help us find Alex." She shook her head, tears welling up. "He's gone. That thing, it took him." Harris sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I believe you saw something, but we need more to go on. Can you take us to this village?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I think so, but it's dangerous. That creature—" "We'll be prepared," Harris assured her. "Just show us where it is." 2 days later, Sarah found herself back in the forest, accompanied by Harris and a team of officers. They retraced her steps, the dense trees closing in around them. "This way," she said, leading them through the undergrowth. After what felt like hours, they reached the clearing. The village stood in eerie silence, just as she remembered. The officers spread out, weapons drawn. "It's just an old village," one of them muttered. Harris shot him a warning glance. "Stay alert. Ms. Thompson, can you show us the house?" Sarah led them to the house where she and Alex had taken refuge. The front door hung ajar, the interior shrouded in shadows. "This is it," she whispered. The officers moved in, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The house was empty, save for the broken furniture and scattered debris. "No sign of a struggle," one officer said. Harris turned to Sarah. "Are you sure this is the place?" Sarah's heart pounded. "Yes, this is where it happened." Suddenly, there was a loud crash from upstairs. The officers tensed, weapons ready. "Stay here," Harris ordered Sarah before leading his team up the creaking stairs. Sarah stood in the doorway, every nerve on edge. The seconds stretched into minutes, each one more agonizing than the last. Then a blood-curdling scream echoed from upstairs, followed by gunshots and inhuman growls. Sarah backed away, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Harris stumbled down the stairs, his face pale. "We need to go. Now!" "What happened?" Sarah cried. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "It's real! The creature—" A massive shape loomed in the doorway, blocking their escape. The creature, its eyes glowing with malevolent hunger, hissed. "Run!" Harris shouted, shoving Sarah towards the back door. She sprinted through the house, the creature's snarls and the officer's screams ringing in her ears. She burst into the open, her legs carrying her as fast as they could. Behind her, the house collapsed in on itself, the creature's roars echoing through the forest. She didn't stop running until she reached the road, collapsing in a sobbing heap. Months passed. Sarah tried to return to a normal life, but the memories haunted her. She couldn't shake the image of the creature, its glowing eyes and jagged teeth. The police had never found Harris or the officers, and the village seemed to have disappeared. No one believed her story. They called it a nervous breakdown, a coping mechanism for the trauma. But Sarah knew the truth. The creature was real, and it was still out there. One evening, as she sat in her small apartment, she heard a familiar low growl outside her window. Her heart froze, and she slowly turned to look. In the darkness, she saw two glowing eyes staring back at her. The creature had found her. She backed away, her breath coming in shallow gasps. There was no escape. The creature moved closer, its growls filling the room. As it lunged at her, Sarah's last thought was of Alex and the terror they had faced together. In the end, the creature claimed her too, leaving no trace of its existence. The village and the horrors within remained a dark, forgotten secret. But the whispers persisted, carried on the wind through the forest, a warning to those who ventured too far off the beaten path. Beware the forgotten village.